What if I told you that reality itself is waiting for you to send it a specific signal? A frequency so precise that when you hold it for just 60 seconds, the entire universe stops resisting your desires and begins obeying your intentions. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to walk through life as if they've unlocked a secret door that remains invisible to everyone else? They attract the perfect opportunities without struggle, find solutions where others see only obstacles, and move through challenges as if an invisible force is clearing the path ahead of them. What do they know that you don't? Here's what might completely transform everything you thought you understood about manifestation, success, and the nature of reality itself. The difference between their experience and yours has nothing to do with luck, privilege, or some ancient secret they're keeping from the world. What if there exists a specific vibrational frequency, a precise energetic state, where life stops, pushing back against you and starts flowing effortlessly in your direction? And what if you could access this frequency in the next 60 seconds? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, think back to those rare moments in your life when something felt fundamentally different. Maybe it was a morning when you woke up with an inexplicable clarity, a sense of alignment you couldn't quite put into words. Has this ever happened to you? Suddenly, the solution to that problem you'd been wrestling with for weeks became obvious. Someone called with exactly the opportunity you'd been hoping for. Doors that seemed permanently locked swung wide open without you even touching them. In those moments, it wasn't that. Reality changed. You were vibrating at a frequency where reality reorganized itself around your consciousness. Most people experience this accidentally, maybe once or twice in their lifetime, and spend the rest of their days wondering how to get back to that magical state. But what you're about to discover is that this isn't magic, and it isn't random. There's a specific frequency, a measurable energetic state where your consciousness becomes visible to possibilities that have always been surrounding you but remained completely imperceptible to your awareness. Modern quantum physics is now validating what ancient wisdom teachers understood centuries ago. Consciousness operates at different frequencies, and at a certain threshold, something extraordinary occurs. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share goes far deeper than positive thinking or visualization techniques. In fact, those approaches might actually be keeping you trapped at the exact frequency that repels everything you desire most. What you're about to learn is how to feel this frequency intentionally, hold it consciously, and watch as reality begins to obey without resistance. And the transformation begins with understanding what's actually happening in those 60 seconds when everything shifts. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because what I'm about to reveal will completely shift how you understand the invisible architecture of your entire experience. There's a field of information that exists all around you right now, a living matrix of every pattern, every possibility, every solution, and every opportunity that could ever manifest in your physical reality. One of the most profound spiritual teachers of the last century, Florence Scovel Shinn, spent years exploring this hidden dimension of human consciousness, and what she discovered was nothing short of revolutionary. She identified what she called the collective unconscious. But here's where most people completely misunderstand what that actually means. This isn't some vague, mystical concept floating somewhere in the spiritual ether. It's an actual field, an invisible web connecting every human consciousness that has ever existed. Think of it as an ocean of pure potential surrounding you at every moment. Within this field lies everything, every breakthrough waiting to happen, every connection that could transform your life, every answer you've been searching for. It's all there, all the time, like radio signals broadcasting continuously through the air. But here's the hidden truth that changes the entire game and explains why your life looks the way it does right now. You're only perceiving a fraction of what's actually available to you. Your personal consciousness is constantly interacting with this field whether you realize it or not, and every single thought you think, every belief you hold, every expectation you carry is vibrating at a specific frequency, like a tuning fork. That frequency determines what becomes visible to you within this vast ocean of possibility. This is the revelation that transforms everything once you really see it. And if you haven't already joined this community, hit that subscribe button. Everything we create here is designed to expand your awareness and give you real tools for transformation, not just theory, but practices you can actually apply to shift your reality. When you're operating at lower frequencies shaped by fear, doubt, scarcity thinking, or survival mode, you're essentially walking through life wearing blinders. Entire dimensions of possibility exist right in front of you, literally within arm's reach, but they're completely invisible to your perception. It's not that the opportunities aren't there. It's not that the solutions don't exist. It's that your consciousness is tuned to a frequency that makes them imperceptible, like trying to pick up an FM radio station when you're tuned to AM. You're looking at the world through a filter that only shows you evidence of what you already believe to be true. This explains something that most people find utterly baffling. Two people can walk through the exact same situation, face the exact same circumstances, and have completely different experiences. They're not living in different realities. They're perceiving different aspects of the same reality based on the frequency at which their consciousness is vibrating. One person sees obstacles everywhere. The other sees doorways opening. Same reality, different frequencies, radically different outcomes. Your decisions, your relationships, your opportunities, your entire journey through life is being shaped by which frequency you're broadcasting from your consciousness. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to see more," if this is starting to make sense and you're recognizing how your own frequency has been shaping what you perceive as possible. Now here's where things get even more fascinating, because what I'm about to share gives you something incredibly valuable. A precise GPS system for understanding exactly where you're vibrating at any given moment. A psychiatrist named David Hawkins dedicated decades of his life to mapping human consciousness with scientific rigor, and what he discovered provides us with a roadmap that changes everything about how we navigate our inner experience. He found that emotions aren't just random feelings that wash over us without meaning or purpose. They're precise indicators, like mile markers on a highway, showing us exactly where we are on the energetic scale of consciousness. Every emotional state you experience is broadcasting a specific frequency, and that frequency is determining what possibilities you can perceive in the field around you. At the bottom of this scale, you find the densest frequencies: shame, guilt, apathy, and grief. These are the states where life feels like it's constantly happening to you, where you're perpetually reacting, defending yourself, just trying to survive another day. And here's what's crucial to understand about these lower frequencies. When someone is operating in this range, it's not just that they feel bad emotionally. Their entire perception of reality is filtered through that density. They literally cannot see the opportunities, the solutions, or the pathways forward that exist right in front of them. It's like trying to perceive colors in complete darkness. The colors are there. They exist in the spectrum, but at that frequency, they're completely invisible to the person looking. This explains why you can offer someone practical advice or point out an obvious solution and they simply cannot see it. It's not that they're being stubborn or difficult. Their consciousness is vibrating at a frequency where that information doesn't register as real or possible. But Hawkins identified something that fundamentally alters the entire trajectory of a person's life. And this is the hidden truth behind every major transformation you've ever witnessed. There's a critical turning point on this consciousness scale, a specific threshold where the entire game shifts. That threshold is courage. Below courage, you're essentially trapped in survival mode, constantly reacting to whatever life throws at you, feeling like a victim of circumstances, believing that your power is limited and your choices are few. Your decisions are driven by fear, by the need to protect yourself, by the desperation to avoid pain or loss. But above courage, something profound happens that impacts every single aspect of your existence. Your relationship with reality fundamentally transforms. You stop being someone to whom life happens, and you become someone who actively shapes their experience. You shift from reactive to creative, from defended to open, from scarcity to possibility. This isn't just a philosophical distinction with no real-world impact. The quality of your relationships changes. Because you're no longer approaching people from a place of need or fear. The opportunities you attract shift because you're now vibrating at a frequency where different possibilities become visible. Your decision-making process transforms because you're accessing information and perspectives that simply weren't available to you before crossing this threshold. Drop a comment saying, "I see the shift," if you're recognizing where you've been operating and where you're ready to move toward. Now, here's where most people get completely confused about this entire concept of high vibration, and it's probably costing them everything they're working toward. The popular narrative that's been circulating through spiritual circles and personal development communities has created what I call the positive thinking trap, and it's keeping more people stuck than almost anything else. You've probably encountered this mindset, the good vibes only philosophy that insists you must maintain positive emotions at all times to stay in alignment with your desires. So what happens? People force gratitude when they're feeling genuinely sad. They repeat affirmations until they're exhausted, trying to convince themselves of something their entire being is resisting. They plaster smiles on their faces, even when everything inside them is screaming in pain. And here's the devastating truth about what happens when you adopt this belief that you must feel positive all the time to maintain a high vibration. You've just created an impossible standard that sets you up for constant failure. Because you're human, you're going to feel sadness, anger, fear, disappointment. These are natural human experiences woven into the fabric of being alive. But now, when these emotions inevitably arise, you don't just feel the original emotion. You add an entire layer of guilt and shame on top of it. You start judging yourself for feeling what you're feeling, which creates massive internal resistance. And that resistance, that war you're now waging against yourself, is what actually lowers your vibration, not the original emotion itself. This is the hidden truth that liberates people when they finally grasp it. The universe doesn't operate on a static frequency of permanent happiness. Everything in existence moves in cycles, in rhythms. The seasons change, the tides rise and fall, day transforms into night and back into day again. This cyclical nature is fundamental to how reality actually works. When you try to stay fixed at one emotional extreme, you're creating enormous internal tension because you're fighting against the natural flow of energy that governs everything. True high vibration isn't about denying half of the human experience or pretending that uncomfortable emotions don't exist. It's about developing a consciousness that can hold space for all emotions without being dominated by them, without losing your center, without forgetting who you really are beneath the temporary weather patterns of feeling. What actually elevates your frequency is something called conscious acceptance. The capacity to observe what's moving through you without identifying yourself as that movement. When you can witness anger arising and recognize there is anger present instead of collapsing into "I am angry," you've just made a quantum leap in consciousness. This distinction might seem subtle, but its impact on your entire life is massive. You're no longer at the mercy of your emotional states, tossed around by every wave that passes through. You're no longer making critical decisions from inside the storm. You're developing the ability to remain anchored even when powerful emotions are moving through you, and that stability is what allows you to access higher frequencies consistently rather than just in fleeting moments. Leave a comment saying, "I choose acceptance," if this is shifting how you've been approaching your own emotional experience and you're ready to stop fighting yourself. Now, speaking of quantum leaps, this is where science and spirituality meet in the most mind-bending way imaginable, and what you're about to understand will completely shift how you see the nature of reality itself. Modern quantum physics has shattered the old materialist view of the world, the idea that everything is solid, fixed, and separate. What scientists have discovered is that the world we think we're living in, this apparently solid reality where objects have definite positions and properties, is actually something entirely different at its fundamental level. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, even your own body. At the quantum level, these aren't solid objects at all. They're patterns of energy and information vibrating at specific frequencies. And here's the revelation that changes everything about what you thought was possible. We're only perceiving about 5% of what actually exists. Our human senses can only detect a tiny slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, which means there are entire dimensions of reality operating all around us right now that we simply cannot see with our ordinary perception. This isn't spiritual fantasy or wishful thinking. This is established scientific fact. And what it means is that when you expand your consciousness, when you raise your vibrational frequency, you're not just changing how you feel about reality. You're literally gaining access to layers of reality that were previously invisible to you. You're tuning into frequencies of information and possibility that exist beyond the narrow bandwidth of ordinary perception. The transformation that occurs isn't just psychological, it's perceptual. Your brain starts processing information it was previously filtering out, and suddenly you're seeing connections, opportunities, and solutions that were always there but existed outside your perceptual range. This brings us to something even more revolutionary that neuroscience has revealed about the relationship between consciousness and biology. Your thoughts and emotions aren't just abstract experiences floating through your mind with no real impact. They're actively reprogramming your brain structure in real time, creating new neural pathways, strengthening certain connections while weakening others, and even influencing genetic expression through what scientists call epigenetics. Think about the profound implications of this for your journey. Every single time you make a conscious decision to observe your patterns, instead of being swept away by them, you're literally rewiring the physical hardware of your brain. This is the hidden mechanism behind genuine transformation, and it's happening at the intersection where scientific understanding meets spiritual practice. You're not just thinking differently, you're physically becoming different at the neurological level. And this is why knowledge alone never changes anyone. You can read 1,000 books, watch endless videos, understand every theory about consciousness and vibration. But until you actually practice observing yourself, until you catch those automatic reactions in real time and make different decisions, nothing in your physical reality shifts. The transformation requires you to engage with your own consciousness in a way that most people never do, creating new patterns that override the old programming running in the background of your mind. Right? I'm rewiring. Now, in the comments, if you're recognizing that this process has already begun in your own experience. And this brings us to perhaps the most profound shift that's possible in human consciousness. And once you grasp this, your entire relationship with your inner experience transforms in ways that most people never imagine possible. Here's a question that can change everything. When you feel angry, who is it that's angry? When you notice a thought passing through your mind, who is the one noticing? Stay with this for a moment because it's not just a philosophical puzzle. It's pointing to something real about your nature. There's the anger, and then there's the awareness of the anger. There's the thought, and then there's the consciousness observing the thought. Which one is really you? This is what's called observer consciousness or witnessing awareness. And when you start exploring this with genuine curiosity, something fascinating happens. You begin to access a part of yourself that exists at a naturally higher frequency than any mental or emotional content. You're no longer trapped in the drama of the ego story, caught up in every narrative your mind creates. You're the space in which all stories arise and fall away. From this elevated perspective, dense energies that used to grip you for hours or even days begin to dissolve almost immediately. You can feel fear without becoming fearful. You can experience sadness without becoming a sad person. You can watch anger, Move through without letting it dictate your decisions or damage your relationships. This isn't suppression or denial. It's a fundamentally different way of relating to your inner experience. The ego loves to convince you that you are your thoughts, your feelings, your history, your wounds. But all of those things are just content passing through the field of your awareness. They're temporary, they're changeable. And when you realize this deeply, not just intellectually, but experientially, your entire vibrational frequency shifts. But understanding this observer perspective is one thing. The real test of vibrational mastery isn't whether you can maintain peace when everything in your life is going smoothly. Anyone can feel centered when there are no challenges. The revelation of how far you've come shows up in those moments when the storm hits, when the emotion feels overwhelming, and yet somehow you manage to remain anchored in that witnessing awareness. Here's where the practical impact becomes crystal clear, and this is the 60-second practice that shifts everything. When a dense emotion arises, let's say it's anxiety about a decision you need to make, you have a choice in how you relate to it. The old pattern, the unconscious pattern, is immediate identification. I am anxious. But there's another way, a path that requires practice but becomes more natural every time you choose it. You notice the anxiety arising, and instead of collapsing into it, you create a tiny bit of space. You say internally, "There is anxiety present in my experience." Do you feel the difference in those words? You haven't denied the emotion, but you also haven't confused it with your identity. And then comes the next crucial step. You welcome it without judgment, asking, "What are you here to show me?" Your breath becomes the bridge between your body and consciousness, giving trapped energy permission to move through you instead of staying stuck. This simple distinction, practiced consistently for just 60 seconds when emotions arise, becomes the gateway to sustained vibrational mastery. Drop a comment with "I am the awareness" if this distinction is becoming clear and you're ready to practice this in real time. So here we are, and if you've made it this far, that tells me something important about you. Most people would have clicked away looking for a quick fix or an easy answer, but you stayed because you recognized that real transformation requires depth, understanding, and a willingness to look at things from angles you've never considered before. That matters more than you might realize. If something shifted in how you understand consciousness and frequency during our time together, I genuinely appreciate it if you hit that like button. Not because I need the validation, but because it helps this message reach other people who are truly searching for this kind of understanding. There are so many voices out there promising instant results with no effort, and we need more spaces where people are willing to dive deeper, to explore what's actually true rather than what simply sounds appealing. And if you're not already part of this community, consider subscribing. What we explore here is the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern science, between spiritual understanding and practical application. Every video is designed to give you something real, something you can actually use to expand your consciousness and transform how you experience reality. This isn't about entertainment. It's about genuine evolution, and I'd love to have you along for this journey. Leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," if you feel like this video found you at exactly the right time. I read every single comment, and I'm genuinely curious about where you are in your own process of expansion. There's a video right here that takes what we've explored today even further, diving into the practical techniques for maintaining elevated states even when external circumstances are challenging. Click and continue with me over there. I think you'll find it's the perfect next step from where we are right now. Thank you for being here, for staying present, and for choosing consciousness.